Welcome everybody to a lecture on sustained attention. If you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to go back and look at the lecture on selective attention as I describe what attention is and why it's important in the beginnings of that lecture. Very briefly, attention is a cognitive process that allows us to engage in focused behavior. We might use other terms like concentration and focus to talk about attention. So what is sustained attention? Sustained attention is a process of sustained control on task engagement. It's the ability to hold focus on stimuli consistently for a specific duration of time. When we think about a selective attention, which is the ability to attend to some piece of information and ignore irrelevant information, that could change and fluctuate frequently. When we talk about sustained attention, what we're focusing on is how long and a duration of time in which you can attend to the same thing and how effectively you can do it. Sustained attention ability is associated with impulsivity. So you can imagine if that you really struggle to remain focused on something for a significant duration of time, you might impulsively move from thing to thing or attend to other things. We use sustained attention every single day. We might use it for paying attention in class or taking a test, for driving a car or engaging in a conversation. To do each of these things effectively, and most of the things that we do day to day, we need to be able to focus on something, that selective attention piece, but then hold that focus for as long as we need it. Work on sustained attention dates back to the 1940s with a researcher, Norman Mackworth. What he noticed is that while he was looking at individuals who were monitoring war, radar, and sonar information during World War II, these folks were more likely to miss the targets they were looking for as time went on throughout the day. So essentially what we're saying is that sustained attention kind of waxes and wanes over time, and it might be hard to attend to something for a long period of time, at least attend to it effectively. So what he created is this Mackworth clock test. So what you're going to see is a circle with dots and a red dot that you're going to attend to. If you were taking the task, you would push usually a space bar every time the red dot skips some of the spaces. You'll see what I mean when I show it to you. So there's the red dot up at the top. And it moves around the clock. Occasionally, like right there, it skips multiple spaces. So rather than just moving sequentially, it skips more, it skips two or more. And what you're asked to do is watch this for a duration of time and see what accuracy looks like as time goes on. This is an example of sustained attention. Sustained attention has three key components. One or three key components that affect it, or factors that affect it. One is task parameters. So the speed of the stimulus, the quality of the stimulus. If you're watching something, looking at something that's really faded or fuzzy or hard to hear or hard to see, it makes it harder to pay attention. So there are aspects of the tasks that we have that make it harder or easier to pay attention to for a long period of time. Participant characteristics also have a big role in sustained attention. For instance, someone's age. So you can imagine asking a 3 or 4-year-old to sustain attention for a really long time. That's particularly difficult. Clinical presentation. So we know folks with ADHD, for instance, sometimes depression or anxiety may also have a hard time with a sustained attention. And motivation. If it's a very boring task, something you're not interested in, and there's not a reward, it's going to be hard to have sustained attention. Another factor or another component here are environmental conditions. So if you're in an environment in which there's lots of distractions, it's really noisy, your sleep quality has been really poor. All of these things are going to affect your ability to sustain attention. And I imagine if you take a second now to kind of reflect on things that you've had to do that require a lot of attention, studying for a test, depending on your participant characteristics or depending on your personal characteristics, you may find that you need to be in a quiet library because too much noise is distracting and you can't sustain attention. You may also find that you need to have a really good night's sleep to effectively take a standardized test because as you get tired, your performance drops. So we measure sustained attention in a couple different ways. So a couple of those are vigilance tests. So vigilance tests are ones that require the individual to hold attention for a specific duration of time and indicate that they're able to detect a specific stimulus during that time. That's how you know they're paying attention. I don't have a visual of this, but a psychomotor vigilance test is when participants are instructed to respond to a stimulus presentation on the screen by pressing a button. So essentially, we're asking you to do a motor movement that indicates that you're paying attention. A really common test that is used a lot is the continuous performance test, and the second version, the CPT. So I'm going to show you what the CPT looks like. This is a demo for child psychopathology, so thinking child inattention focused problems. What you're asked to do would be asked to do in here is attend to every time that you see the X. The numbers are just counting down. So either in research or a clinical setting, you have your participant or patient sitting there paying attention to these letters, and you ask them to push a button every time they see the X. I am only showing it to you for honestly, a few seconds, but you could imagine if you had to do this for 5 minutes, your ability to attend to this for 5 minutes is going to vary on a lot of different factors. And it is a good measure of ability to sustain attention, particularly if we're thinking about something that's kind of boring. Note that none of the tasks that I've described are particularly challenging cognitively other than attention. And that's key because in neuropsych assessments, what we want to make sure is that we're really tapping into the construct of interest, which in this instance is sustained attention, not other higher order cognitive processes or language processes. So sustained attention requires monitoring and updating of information. So these tests could get a little bit more complicated if we have to add and update information as we go through. The ones that I just showed you really truly are just monitoring and you're not getting additional information, but sustained attention in the real world often requires updating information. So if we think about driving, let's say you're going on a road trip, you need sustained attention to drive for a period of time and drive effectively. You might also update information if you notice that there's construction or the weather has changed. So really sustained attention in the real world has both the monitoring component as well as updating your information. We know that sustained attention can be affected by fatigue and mental effort over time. And this is a big reason on why it may vary person to person and honestly may vary within the individual when they're being tested. We typically see disruption to sustained attention in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the inattentive subtype in particular. We see it in depression. This may be related to mental effort, fatigue, motivation. Similarly, in sleep deprivation, which is going to affect your ability to pay attention in general, as well as increase that fatigue, sustained attention is hard. And anxiety and other neurological conditions like Alzheimer's as well. So we see attention being challenged in each of these disorders. So if you're doing neuropsychological assessment, tasks of sustained attention could give you more information on certain aspects of these disorders or on certain traits. You would want to make sure if you were testing somebody for Alzheimer's or ADHD using neuropsychological assessment that they weren't sleep deprived the night before. This is where doing these assessments in the real world can be very tricky, particularly if you're working with individuals who are coming from environmental conditions that are not ideal, or if you are doing neuropsychological testing in a clinic where there's a lot of noise or construction. So be mindful of all of the variables that could affect somebody's ability to sustain attention. Sustained attention, as I mentioned, is incredibly important for our day-to-day abilities and is something that we make sure to assess and target when we're thinking about a variety of psychiatric disorders.